Today we are discussing the Gartner Market Guide for IGA 2025 with IAM expert and author Vlad Shapiro. Vlad has recently published an analysis of the Gartner Market Guide for Identity Governance and Administration 2025. And the Gartner Guides provide an insight, research analysis to help leaders in various functions make informed decisions on technology, strategy, operations. And today we have that opportunity to discuss with Vlad his analysis and the most recent Gartner report on IGA, what's changed and what's new, and how this might impact the IGA space. Is that a fair description, Vlad, of your...
Yes, it is a very fair description. I'm doing it for many years. I started doing it at when Magic Quadrant was still around. And yes, I do have a whole collection of my own analysis. People loved it. But the most important thing, what I hear, Gartner loves it. So, so for example, for this particular report, I got very positive news from Rebecca Chambot, one of the leading analysts who was writing this thing. And before that, I usually got pretty good reviews from Gartner itself, which I'm very proud of.
That's amazing feedback. That's great to get. And I guess, so like if we started with like a helicopter inspection of the report, what are the main messages in this year's guide?
This year's guide, as I mentioned in my analysis, is very business oriented. So the story of the guide in general, is basically the following. Gartner is trying to steer two groups of people. One of them are vendors. Another one are the people who are using the systems, right? And who are making decisions. We're going to have a little conversation with the separation between those two, but in general, always, in my analysis, I'm trying to get what they want to say, what I want to say to vendors, what they want to say to the people going to use the systems. Okay. So from that perspective, what the message to the vendor, number one message is, don't concentrate on toys. Look at what people really need from the business standpoint. And the main message to the customers, potential customers, IAM leaders, is when you try to convince your own company to use a specific product or to do something, don't talk about technology. Talk about what company gets out of it, what kind of business problem they try to resolve, why in the world leaders of the company should care. Because as you understand, IAM is one of the technologies. It's not the technology everybody is talking about. That to me is the main message.
Sure. And that makes sense, I guess, especially with those two audiences in mind. I'm assuming that is what you meant by IGA Means Business. It is very much focused at the business market and the business drivers.
Yes. Yeah. And it's like, say, if there is a slogan you have to put on top of every marketing material, it's IGA Means Business. And I get a confirmation from Rebecca. That's exactly what she was talking about. And so just think about this. The top, I would say, important 5 words in the report, which are mathematically meant the most. Machine 50 times, AI 44, business 42, visibility 38, organization 34. Okay? That is your top 5 words. What does it tell you? Well, AI, obviously, you have to put it in. Machine, obviously, you have to put it in because non-human or machine identity is a big deal right now. But business, visibility, organization, none of these words are technical at all, right? So the word IAM in the report is less than business, That is very interesting. That is very interesting. Also, the messages, if you read, for example, the 2 first pages, right? You'll find business drivers, business critical applications, business outcomes, business values, right? That is what you see on the 2 pages. And when you read between the line, basically you say, yeah, that's where we're going, right? That is an evidence. Then you go along the way of general observation and everything else, and you have a very practical advices. Like main message basically is, do not look for a silver bullet solution. That's a very business oriented message, right? A single best practice does not exist due to business drivers and practical executions. These differ significantly from one organization to another one. It's a very business-like comment, right? Very business-like. What's next? When you're talking about 8 primary drivers, and again, look at this. Technical report is talking about primary drivers, not features, right? And what the drivers are: cyber threats, regulatory demands, digital transformation, complex environment, machine identity, user experience, decentralized identity model, and need for a smarter risk management. How many of those are technical? 3, right? It's a complex IT environment, a decentralized model, and the machine identity. The rest are very, very business, right? User experience, okay? The smarter risk management. Now, this is another interesting thing. This is where Gartner sees cohesion between cybersecurity and identity. More and more people discussing that we should look at that one, single pane glass on both. Some people think that identity is a part of cybersecurity. I don't think so. I think it's a Venn diagram. We have something with it, something not. But what is absolutely clear, that the previous driver of compliance is not the main driver anymore. Risk is, and I agree with that. When you are, and a lot of people are talking about when the cybersecurity vendors are selling products, including identity, they're not selling compliance anymore. They're selling risk. And one of the guys said, one of the sales guys said, like, I'm selling to CISO. I'm selling to CISO good night's sleep. That's what I'm selling. Okay. Which is a positive message, not negative message. How identity and security got together? Well, as we know before, identity was always enabler, and security was always, I don't want to call it disabler, but the limitation person who say very often you can't do that because that's bad. In today's world, and I believe that's where we're going to go, and Gartner agrees with that, it's not saying it's bad. It's going to tell you, well, if you go this way, here is your risk factors, and here is your numbers on the risk. But if you go that way, your risk is going to decrease. It's going to definitely cost you more money. It takes more time, deeper, but your risk decreases. So, Mr. CEO or Mr. Members of the board, which way you want to go? That's them make a decision. That is very important message all across the business. And again, it's a business message, not technical message.
I think that as well is if I'm not mistaken, kind of dovetails with this recent shift to identity first security approach in cybersecurity. Vlad, can you tell me a little bit about where that has come from? Or it seems to work with what you were saying there, that we've moved away from a compliance first to a security first. And what I see in the Gartner paper was that it was identity first cybersecurity.
Right. So basic principles of any IT system. Why do we even exist? We existed so people can use it, right? So the people, in theory, is supposed to be in the center of it, right? What is identity? Identity, in my opinion, again, it's my definition, is a projection of you into environment where you're working. It's not you, but it's projection of you. And the projection from the mathematical standpoint, if you have, I don't know, you have 100 attributes, only 20 are available or valuable or important for your company. Those 20 is your identity there, right? Now, when people use the systems, for the long time, the misconception was that the biggest risk is coming from the bad actors.
Yeah.
Hackers, some people with malicious attempt or, whatever. In my opinion, the biggest risk comes from regular people who do their jobs. Reason why is because we are very, very lazy by definition. And if we need to do something, we're going to find the easiest way to perform my task.
Yeah.
Sometimes I'm pushed to do that because I have a deadline. And if I follow the protocol, I will not be able to make it. So I'll deviate if I can. Okay?
Yeah.
So but when you deviate, you create a very serious danger about which you don't even know. I'll give you an example from Krakitesh, your home country. I have a friend of mine, it's a real story, that they live in a hotel next to jungle, and there was the office on the other side of the jungle. And every morning there was a big bus coming through to pick them up and bring it to the office. It takes half an hour to drive around. But there was like a pass through the jungle, which is, 15 minutes walk. Okay. So one day from the work, they decided, screw that, let's walk. They walk to the hotel. They walk into the hotel, and the hotel is like, and they said, like, we don't understand why there is a bus. It's a 15 minutes walk. It's beautiful, nice jungles. And the hotel guy said, like, well, yes, it's great, but do you know there are tigers there? It's not like the tiger gonna attack you immediately, but they're there. And if one day they're gonna be hungry, we'll probably will not be able to find you. How many people know about tigers when you're working on a system? You don't. That's why we have identity security idea to tell them, when you do this way, there is a risk about which you have no idea. Reason why we don't know about the risk, because we don't really see what happens on the background. I'm challenging every vendor in the space. Can you create for me a visual diagram of the regular user journey on the back end? What does it mean? When I'm doing my job, I have instructions. Click here, type this, click here, type this, go over there, type this, click over there, and then you get a result.
Mm-hmm.
That's 99% of our work, isn't it? Like, if you type something, you have to click something. I'm talking about users, not type. Right?
Yeah.
But when you click and when you type, do you know what happens on the back end? You don't know. For example, a very simple example that people don't know is when you're using company's portal. When you log in the company's portal, it's you. It's your identity used to get into the portal.
Yeah.
But when you go from the portal to the application through single sign-on, it's not you anymore. It's either service account or OAuth token or API call, but it's not you. Right?
Yeah.
Is it protected? I don't know. If there are 2 or 3 different methods to get to the other side, right? Should I do that? I don't know. Maybe I can log in directly into that application, avoiding the whole shebang immediately. That's, faster, simpler, and it's me, right?
Mm-hmm.
But if it's you inside of the application, maybe you're not as protected as service account. I don't know. But I challenge any, I haven't found a vendor yet who can visualize the whole back-end process, which can tell me this is how you go. This is who actually performed the actions on your behalf. Anyway, so that is what people don't know. That's where the tigers are lurking, right? But so when we did perimeters and when we did network controls and when we did endpoint controls, we still cannot get out of it. We need to do it, right? But with all of that, since you're actually doing your actions not within your network, right, not on your endpoint, a lot of bad thing can happen. Do we have a control of it? No. It's SAS company who does control it, right? Do you know who administered that thing? I have no idea, right? Even in AWS, if you ask a question like, who administered our machines yesterday? I have a different person yesterday and today, and they don't know who they are, right? So the answer is like, oh, you don't protect your data, you just encrypt it. The next question is, where's your encryption key? Is it on the same machine? That's your answer, right? Yeah. So that's why it comes back to identity, to someone who performed the action. If that person who is behind the identity is informed and protected by the guardrails created by us, identity people, access control people, then we're going to feel much better. It doesn't definitely mean that we shouldn't care about endpoint security or target point security, but because actions are done using identity, right? If we concentrate on that, then we're going to have a much better picture. And again, visibility is one of the questions on the Gartner report of what happens. And when you see something, then we can act correspondingly.
And I think feeding into that, just because you mentioned it there a couple of times, visibility and kind of your understanding or your ability to know what's going on. Like the visibility intelligence action model was a big thing in this year's Gartner report. How does that model apply to modern IGA programs?
Well, Gartner started it a couple of years ago. It's not the first time they're using this model, but the reason why they're repeating it because people didn't get it. So the problem, here is the problem. The IAM operations are completely invisible unless something happens. Last year at Identities, I had a presentation named, "When something goes wrong, are you ready?" Okay. Guess what happened in a month and a half after my presentation? CrowdStrike disaster.
Something happened.
CrowdStrike disaster, the famous one. Okay. So I'm not Nostradamus, I'm not that kind of great. But what is absolutely clear is an IAM operation is invisible until something happens, right? Until something goes wrong. So visibility becomes important only in forensics, right? What happened? We need to see it. I have a better proposal, and this is what Gartner says. If you want to minimize, because you can't completely get rid of it, but minimize potential issues, it would be not such a bad idea to visualize what the process look like. You need to see not who has access to what, but who is using that access. I can have, that classical story. You have a custodian in any building which has 100 keys to every office.
Mm-hmm.
Question is he a guy who gonna open the door of every office? No. Why does he have so many keys? Well, in case something happened, he has those keys, right? So if I would be a bad guy, I would attack custodian and take all of his keys, right? And, and pretend that I'm him and enter whatever building I want, right? But custodian need to have those keys because of regulations. In case of fire, you never know. But it's a trust, but it's also a trusted person by the company. Otherwise, he would never work there. Now, how trusted are all of us? It's not in terms of like we have a malicious intent, but we can be lured to do something, right? Who knows?
Or something.
That's right. It could be an error. I thought I'm going into room, 304, but it's room actually 1304. I didn't see one because one was, dangling and maybe it fell off from the door, and I was on 13th floor, and I just opened the door because my key opens it, right? That happens very often, right? So visibility has, as I said, two important components: what you can do and you actually did, right? And also, we're lacking it when it comes to translating the process defined or process or workflow into actual what happened on the back end. This is what I just example. The next step is what they're saying is you cannot have any intelligence without visibility, which is 100% true. How can you know what happened if you never seen it happen, right? That's why if you look today, a lot of AI products of the companies are trying to develop are concentrating on improving visibility. But again, visibility is based on real data. So the question becomes, how can we collect real data? And how can we integrate and correlate real data to become a chain, a visibility chain, right? Well, AI is pretty good at this. If you know, you could get collections of the data from the sources, and then you run the simulation AI, not generative, I'm sorry, but simulation AI, which normally called machine learning. Then you can probably run many experiments. And I believe that one of the biggest use AI for IGA, and by the way, there is an AI for IGA, and there is an IGA for AI. So we're talking about AI for IGA, right? You can run experiments, and you can compare what happened if you tried to do this chain versus what really happened, right? Because you can run millions of those experiments and compare the logs with what. So this way you can do kind of a prediction of what's going to happen when people do something, and what kind of, what called it, minimal viable set of entitlements people need to perform the task. But what is in the center is a task, right? Now, intelligence comes after you see everything. And when you have intelligence, then you can use action plan. Because if you don't have intelligence and you do action plan, we're going to have CrowdStrike story, which is not a full. By the way, in my opinion, the biggest culprit is not CrowdStrike. It's people who created policies. You know, if your policies never, ever give administrative access to the local machines to the local users, then you're going to have a problem, right? But if in emergency case, every local user, imagine if a year ago, if 2 years ago, every local user at every Delta airline machine could have an access to their terminal, and they can just reboot it. In 5 minutes, all problem will be over, right? But because it didn't happen, okay. So that is lack of visibility and intelligence, which translated into lack of actions. That is why, to me, this is DIA model is probably one of the most important model that Gartner developed in the last several years. And I strongly recommend everybody to use it and explain it to non-technical people, you know, in a very simple way. If you don't see what's going on, you can't reason, you can intelligently research what's going on, and you cannot make right actions. All right. So
again, I assume as a basis for your business driver, that can be a foundational piece.
Correct. And then you can go to your management and say, we have blind spots. Right? If you have a physical security building around your building, you don't want a blind spots with your cameras, right? You want to cover everything. And if there is a blind spot, you know who's going to find out about it first? The bad guys. Because that's what they do, right? That's in every movie, right? They find, oh, ventilation vents are not closed, right? Anyway, classic, right? In every movie, same story. It's so funny. So the same thing. And in today's world, and by the way, this report tells us that one of the biggest blind spots for us are NHIs, non-human identities or machine identities. That's a blind spot. And the reason why it's blind spot is not technology. It's responsibility. So, like this is a good question everybody's asking. Okay, we have Agentic AI. Who's going to own it? Technology, business, both, you know? Because in case of going back to compliance, in case of compliance, we clearly know who owns what. In attestation, we make sure that we know that certain entitlement owned by someone, or if we don't know that, then we're going to push them to do that. Because if you as a group using this entitlement all the time, you probably should own it. But when it comes to, okay, Agentic AI or, I don't know, service accounts are easy, but like API calls or like any kind of non-human identity, who actually supposed to own it? That's an interesting question, right? To me, it is visibility, right?
And I think there was a concern raised in the Gartner paper about business owners' concerns about the compliance ramifications of AI actions being taken on their behalf. And again, like you say, who owns that, or who takes responsibility for it?
Well, but Agentic AI basic principle is the following. They are oriented to do the job, no matter what. And they are completely autonomous on making decisions how. They need to bring the results back, which creates a lot of danger of breaking the laws, getting against the policy, or somewhere else. Because Agentic AI does not tell you how they got the data, right? It's like biggest example for me is like if you are Valentine's Day, right? And you ask, and there's no good flowers, so you ask Agentic AI, find flowers for my wife. I need them now. Okay? And they bring beautiful flowers. And you give it to your wife suddenly, and like, you know, you realize that that flowers actually came from your neighbor's garden.
Yeah.
Agentic AI doesn't care if it comes from the neighbor's garden because you are the ones who gave them the order. He didn't say, don't go to, neighbor's garden. You say, I need flowers. Okay? So that is a very big problem. Also, very often agentic AIs are not owned by the companies who actually run it. For example, if you go to Expedia or Travelocity or any other places, they have a bot, which is agentic AI. Do you think those companies own it? No, it's a third party. So responsibility is not there. So which comes back to the question, okay, how can we convince the leadership of the companies who are doing, everybody's going to use agentic AI very soon. Like, that's going to be no doubt. How do we, first of all, convince them to spend money on security, and spend money on access governance, spend money on creating a very strict guardrails for AI, agentic AI, not go to these, neighbors' garden, because you can't prevent everything, right? And you cannot also prescribe the route, because agentic AI was prescription route. Why do we even need it? Then we can do this human, or just a script, right? So the whole idea is there's no route, right? So what should we do? In this case, I would say, I would like to explain one word. Yeah, then I have my own company, and the name of my company is Custodity. It's my own TM'd English word, Ukrainian, creating an English word. Custodity stands for cost of curiosity and stupidity. Okay, why is it such a great word? Because I have a mathematical model that can calculate you how much money you're losing because your people are curious and your policies are stupid. Okay, that's a great combination. AI, agentic AI by nature is curious, and by nature are immediately figuring out which rules are stupid and gonna get around it. Okay, so you are in danger of losing this very quickly. What is the right solution for that? If you ask me, the right solution for that is control. You have to know what they're doing. You have to know what kind of program is running on the back end. You have to know what decisions the agentic AI is making, and you should be able to not to control what they're doing, but adjust. Right? Like when we're driving on the road, right? There are some beeping things coming if you're too close to the other car or too close to the curb, right?
Yeah.
Or and sometimes it applies emergency brakes. That's what we need. Those things don't drive the car, but those things give you a message saying, don't do this, right? So we need to build something like that. And unfortunately, there is no science for that. There's no technology for that. We're trying to say, okay, we're going to use MSP servers. Everybody's building MSP server now. But who's going to be responsible for making sure that those MSP servers contain some kind of guardrails, some kind of signals that basically tell the agentic AI don't do this. And how to do that? Agentic AI is a good calculated machine. It's based on risk, right? It's based on risk and value. So if you somehow you use all those railings, right? All those guardrails to increase the risk calculational model, agentic AI itself will not go there. So what we need to do, we need to figure it out how to do that. And this is very similar. And I'm just, again, pushing it many times already told it. I have to write about it. I think what we're doing is very similar to the history of nuclear energy. We are Maria Sklodowska-Curie and her husband Pierre with radium lying on the table in front of us. And unlike them, who are very cautious, we're telling the rest of the world, hey, this is absolutely unlimited source of energy. We can put it in a watch. We can put it in a bulb. It will work forever.
Put it into everything. Yeah.
Right? It will work forever. It's great. It's amazing. Think about it. Well, I mean, 100 years ago, they didn't know you're going to die from it, right? Now we do. Okay. 100 years ago, they didn't know about induced radiation. When the radium hits uranium and suddenly tons of gamma goes around and hit more uranium and create a chain reaction. We will be witnessing chain reaction in the identities. We will be witnessing chain reaction in the information, like, for example, deep fake spread or any kind of that is a chain reaction. And who are the gamma? You know who are? Agentic AIs. They are our gammas, right? You hit MSP server, it hits hundreds of other agents, and then it hits more. So what we don't have graphite rods. You know what graphite rods does, right? In a nuclear reactor, you just put them down when reaction goes haywire. That's in the world called fail modes, right? What's the difference between error and fail mode? Error is when something happened which not supposed to happen at all, like some kind of real error, like somebody scored on themselves, right? Scored their own goal. That's an error. Fail mode is predicted process which exists, but it goes against your goal. Okay. So going back to the terminology of sports, if you're a defender and you, without looking, passing the ball back to your goalie, the fail mode is the forward running from behind you, steal the ball and score. Is that predicted? Yes.
Yeah.
That's a fail mode, right? So the fail mode correction in this case is coach who screams the long out, don't pass back. That's bad, you know. Can you prevent from the person to not pass the ball back? No. But you can give him like a risk probability calculation saying, that's a bad idea. Maybe I should kick the ball out. I mean, it's a better idea, right? Same thing. Do we have it already pre-programmed inside of AI? No, we don't. Why? Because we want to, cut the corners and do it really, really fast. And also, hype is a great motivator not doing this. This is why visibility becomes very good helper to build fail modes, because you can see those fail modes are happening. You can run an experiment and show, look at those fail modes. What do we do about it? In nuclear energy today, 15 to 20% of all the budget towards any project related to nuclear energy is related to security, meaning what to do with fail mode happen, how to prevent them from getting really bad. Okay, we have to take the same approach, especially in Agentic AI and IGA. We know that fail mode will exist. We will not be able to say, no, it will happen. What are we doing? It will happen, right? Typical example of good fail mode, you know that one day, one of your machines will die.
Yeah.
It will happen. I don't know when, but it will. So what are you doing? You're building a cluster. So one dies, you have a second one. Right?
Yeah.
Or classical, right?
But a question plan.
Yeah, the classical disaster recovery, right? You have servers in Ireland and you have a server in New Zealand in case something happened in Ireland or New Zealand, not in both places. So we don't have this approach in IGA, but we should. And that particular approach is very reasonable with the management, because management is making money by operations, right? By doing business, right? So the conversation here is, if you can convince your management that the bottom line will be affected if you don't have visibility. And if you don't have visibility, you don't know failure mode. If you don't know failure mode, your risk is really high. That's why all of that is connected in the paper.
Very interesting. Very interesting. I had a slight segue here, but I picked up on something that you wrote in your analysis that piqued my interest. I think you said, I do not know if authors used Gen AI in writing this year's guide, but Gen AI knew about this document and influenced it quietly, probably via machine identities. So I'd love to know, what did you mean by that?
This is definitely I'm trying to put the joke in, but what I meant by that is I cannot prove it. But you know that Bill Maher, we have a great comedian here in America, Bill Maher, and one of his sections is, I don't know if it happened, but I know it's true, right? I can't, something like, there's a whole, is it like, I don't know it, but I know it's, I can't prove it, but I know it's true. So I don't know it, but I'm sure that the analysts were using AI to write this.
Yeah.
I'm sure. And I'm sure that when they use ChatGPT, Claude, or any of those, they don't know all the little things that the programmers wrote into that thing. Maybe AI wants to promote themselves. As you believe in, that all of the identities, all the AI and machine identities are in cahoots. I don't believe in that. But
yeah. There's a method of self-preservation possibly there. So that gave me a little laugh when I read that. It was very good.
That's the whole idea. Yeah. If you talk to, I am a practitioner. I'm working with actual companies. The people who are using AI for IGA are probably less than 1%. Takes second place in the document. Okay, why are we talking about something nobody's using? Why we're not talking about ownership of entitlements, which is much more serious problem, right? Things like that. That is what people really care. And by the way, going about that, my segue is I love the idea of the Gartner saying that you can use complementary tools to your main tool. It's the thing. Being a practitioner, hey, for example, you're an IAM leader and you're like, I don't know, decision maker. And you look at the product which you have and you don't like it. You just like it's too, it takes too much time to develop. You need to spend a lot of money on consultant. And sometimes it starts with letter S, but that's okay. So yeah. So you don't like, first, you don't want to spend more money on this product, but you need to do other stuff. Now you can come back and say, listen, this is a little thing which this product doesn't do really well. Okay. How about we're going to get a complementary tool, which will cost us less than develop an existing tool, and we just kind of tie them together, working well, everybody's happy. Why not? And the manager said, look, you want to buy another product? He said, no. I want to buy a complementary tool. That's not another product. It's just complementary. That's what the Gartner wrote. We can compare. No, we can do honest job. We can take existing product, calculate how much does it take for us, money, time, to develop certain functionality. And then we take a complementary tool and ask them the same question. If it's faster and cheaper on their side, why should we use the main product? We can use a complementary tool. Okay. So that to me is a very interesting shift. It started basically this year is very openly, and it gives an opportunity instead of just concentrating and saying, oh, everything has to be done by my product. No, we have an alternative with you. We can do it using more than one product. Okay. And again, it's all the twists and turns, and you can figure it out either, and then from the budget standpoint, as an IAM leader, you can do ROI calculations. Say, hey, I think it makes sense. So that is a very interesting turn. Mm-hmm.
It seems very pragmatic, and again, very, very business driven. Like, I suppose no solution does everything, or does everything well. But I guess on that, I mean, the report is the list, I mean, it's the list of applications or IGA software that's out there. In terms of the 20 vendors list and who's in and who's not, is that significant when you look at this? Almost like when you were describing it at the start, it nearly sounded like tech reviewers on YouTube. Like it feeds a little bit to the vendors and also to the customers. But like, is the 20 that's listed, is it the top 20 or what's your
No,
name?
it's definitely not. As I said in my recommendation, list is a list. Just ask Microsoft. Okay, Microsoft is not on the list. So I mean, that's your answer on the question. Why this is a list of 20 companies, right? Why those? Well, in my opinion, rationale of Gartner to choose those is because that's the product they're the most familiar with, them as analysts. Why they're more familiar with their product than other products, I cannot tell you. I don't know. But what I can tell you right now, this is not Magic Quadrant. I don't know the details how they chose, and they're stating from the beginning, please do not use this list as exhaustive list. There are much more companies. We just decided to give you the most familiar. So your answer is, my answer to this is very simple. If you choose the product you need, don't concentrate on the list, concentrate on your use cases. What you can do, you can take one company from the list who specifically is about that and ask any kind of product or specialist, usually specialist, what are similar products to this? Who else are doing the products, right? So you have companies on which we know supposed to be on the list, but they're not on the list. You will see them, but it's a sample list. It's a sample, right? It's like brand. You like a certain brand, you don't like a certain brand, but if you want to buy a good, I don't know, a washing machine or, right? You know there is a brand, but you also go around and say, what are the closest competitive products to this brand? And they will give you a list. And then you, by trying to wash your clothes or whatever, trying to figure it out which product is the best for you, right? The same thing is here. Definitely, there are some definite leaders. I mean, if other thing is what's important is definitely the share of the market. That is some people are asking me about how can you help me to find the right product for you. The first question I'm asking is, what are your use cases? What's your goal? Should I immediately buy top 5, some of the top 5 from the volume? I don't know. Who are you? Are you 100,000 users, behemoth with like trillions of dollars of revenue? It's you, right? They're not going to be able to handle you. But if a small company has a huge partner with a professional service who is big, maybe they can, because their partner is an extension. I don't know. Okay, but that is your circumstantial situation. But again, and also it's important for what exactly you'd like to use it. Is it about more provisioning automation, or it's about risk or compliance, or it's about access controls? It's about cloud. It's about on-prem. Many different parameters. Gartner. I'm very happy that Gartner is reporting and telling we're not analyzing the product based on your use case. And they're specifically said, no silver bullet. There's no one product which fits everybody. Everybody is different. And important thing they're saying, please, when you evaluate products, use professionals, SMEs who know the stuff, and do not rely on volume or whatever the Gartner wrote in this list, right? Because that list just informs you about the company. So again, summarizing, that's not a list of top 10, top 20, no. And it has to be used wisely by looking at what you need and comparing with competitive products which are not necessarily on the list.
Yeah. I did see some terms in that, I think on that, they mentioned the difference between a specialist vendor and how that differentiates from being a Gartner certified specialist. So a specialist vendor has a niche that they're targeting, is that correct?
Yes. So basically what Gartner is saying is this. Again, 2 messages. Message for the vendor. If you do certain thing really well, right? Please concentrate on what you do well. and you still can sell your product.
Yeah.
Do not pretend that you're a generalist and you can do other things really well. Okay. Right? If you just need to fix a specific problem, which specialist vendor can take, don't buy general vendor. It makes no sense. Right? It's going to be cheaper for you. It's going to be lighter for you, and you can control what's going on much better. If you want to grow, there's always a conversation about best of breed versus one vendor.
Yeah.
The answer for Gartner is it really depends on you, and it really depends on your partner. It's so many different circumstances. In some cases, best of breed makes sense. In some cases, one vendor makes sense. Depends, you know. So every company named as a specialist should not be afraid of that. They have to boast it and say, at this thing, we're the best, and Gartner said so. There is no such thing as certified by Gartner. Again, it's an example, but this example will give you enough. Again, my recommendations to the customers. Yeah, have SME who help you out. But if you're like cheap, take one of the samples, go online, and these are doing similar things.
Yeah.
And, you know, you can find the list.
Go from there. Yeah. Yeah. That makes a lot of sense. And it seems to be good pragmatic advice. I don't know. I see we're coming up to time. Just like to thank you very much for your time, Vlad. That was really useful and really helpful. Vlad's analysis of the Gartner Market Guide for IGA is available on his blog at custodity.com. And thank you very much for your time.
Thank you. Have a great day.